The galaxy had grown arrogant. They sat in their halls, obsidian towers floating above planets we'd never heard of, passing judgments, drawing borders, dictating who could rise and who must kneel. The High Accord, they called it, an interstellar council of advanced species who decided which civilizations were ready for the stars. Earth wasn't invited, not because we weren't capable, but because they were afraid of what we might become once we stood beside them. That fear was justified. I still remember the first time I stood outside the gates of the Celestial Conclave 23 years ago. I was part of a recon and retrieval team. Earth class, black badge, no official record. Just one of the ghosts they sent to retrieve or sabotage tech beyond our clearance level. At that point, humans weren't even considered sentient by most galactic records. We were classified as a Category 2 developing species, same as dirt-crawling fungus on Gamma 7. Funny how they were already trying to steal our tech. We'd reverse-engineered faster than light drives in secret. They found out, panicked, and tried to contain us, whatever that meant. Probably a sterilization protocol. We responded the only way humans knew how, with bullets and blood. I lost my brother in the burned orbit of Keros 9. A plasma coil snapped during evac, turned half his torso into charred bone and cooked flesh. He died choking on the name of the people who killed him. Not aliens, humans, Council-sponsored mercs. Earth's own working with the Accord to keep humanity on its knees. That was the first time I stopped believing Earth was fighting to earn a seat. That was the moment I realized we were meant to take it. The Conclave had its reasons. They feared Earth's aggression, our emotional volatility, our adaptability. They said we were unstable, unpredictable, primitive. They weren't wrong. They just forgot one thing. It's the unpredictable ones who win wars. So, we didn't wait for permission. We never filed for recognition, never begged for trade routes, never sent diplomats in suits with hopeful eyes. We sent people like me, hard men with darker pasts, engineers with scars on their hands, soldiers who didn't fear death because Earth was already dying. We became a shadow under their feet, sabotaging, studying, learning, evolving faster than they could track. And then one day, they noticed something terrifying. Human-made ships were appearing in systems we weren't supposed to reach. Our languages started showing up in black market trade hubs. Our weapons, gritty, clunky, brutal, were outperforming clean alien tech on the battlefield. And worst of all, humans weren't dying like they used to. We were adapting. We were becoming more dangerous with every encounter. Not because we had better resources, not because we had better tech, but because pain made us sharper, anger made us faster, loss made us ruthless. I remember when the Council finally tried to speak to us. It was at the Rid of Stars Summit 5 years ago. They left an empty seat at the table. An invitation to Earth, they claimed. But we didn't send anyone. That chair stayed empty the entire summit, because that chair was never meant for us. We weren't coming to be their equals. We were coming to rewrite the game. That's the difference. The other species wanted stability. We wanted survival. They negotiated. We endured. They categorized. We evolved. And when they looked at our empty chair, what they didn't understand was this. We weren't absent. We were watching. We were listening. And we were building something that didn't require their blessing. By the time they finally decided to recognize Earth as a Level 5 sovereign species, the highest rank they offered, we'd already colonized 9 outer systems, developed independent gravity weapons, and torn down one of their ancient war relics in a single raid. We were no longer asking, and we never would. So when they offered us that seat again, this time with open arms and fake smiles, we did what Earth has always done best. We let it stay empty, because our place wasn't at their table, it was above it. You never forget the first time you kill something that bleeds differently. Mine was a Valerie scout on the dead moon of Luth Terra. The damn thing had 4 arms, yellow skin like rotting bark, and eyes like frozen mercury. They don't scream like us when they die. It was more like a wet gurgle, like it didn't understand pain, until it was too late. We weren't supposed to be there. The mission was observation only, a silent scan and pull out. But I saw it crouched by the ridge, planting something in the ice. I remember the way its fingers twitched over the device like it was nervous. I fired before I even thought. Reflex. That was before we knew what they were doing, before we understood the stakes. The Valerie weren't just scouts, they were terraformers. That little device was stage 1 of their quiet colonization protocol. They didn't ask for land, they infected it, changed atmospheres, altered plant life, poisoned water. And then, when the place was unlivable for humans, they declared it neutralized and moved in. We were already losing Earth. We weren't going to lose space, too. I dragged the Valari's corpse back to base. We cut it open, catalogued every inch. No guilt, no second thoughts. By then, Earth had turned all of us into tools. If you cried, you didn't belong out there. Command didn't punish me for breaking protocol. In fact, they promoted me. That's when I knew the rules didn't matter anymore, only the results. The man who recruited me into Shade Division was older than war and twice as angry. He had one arm, no family, and a past that was more red than black. Said his name was King, not Commander King or Agent King, just King. Names are vanity, he told me the day I joined. What matters is what you do with the time they let you live. That was Earth's motto in a way. We were always dying. One disaster after another. Ice caps gone, cities drowned, resources depleted. By the time we made it to the stars, we weren't explorers. We were survivors with guns. King understood that. He didn't want diplomats. He wanted soldiers with nothing to lose. You know what the Council fears most? He asked me once while loading a heat core rifle. I shrugged. Losing control. No, he said. Humans who don't want to be part of the system. People who don't need approval to act. They can't be reasoned with. Can't be bribed. They call us unstable, but what we are is ungovernable. He paused, checked the scope, then added, and ungovernable things break empires. Our next mission wasn't recon. It was theft. Deep in Accord territory, on a Class A research station, orbiting a gas giant called Sky 22. They were working on something called Project Halo. We didn't know what it was, only that it was locked behind 10 layers of clearance and guarded by Sinindar MKs, 10-foot-tall creatures bred for war, with flesh like plated stone and nerves dulled against pain. Shade Division was sent in with 6 men. Only 2 of us made it back, and I was one of them. We got in through an old mining tunnel that hadn't been mapped since the first orbit. Air was thin, gravity off kilter, and heat signatures were scrambled. It was a gift, a crack in their arrogance. The Cinder didn't expect humans to come in from below. They expected diplomacy or sabotage from a distance. They never expected boots on the ground. That was their mistake. We moved through the tunnels like rats with knives, silent, quick, brutal. Each time we dropped one of those rock-skinned bastards, I felt a flicker of something I couldn't name. Not pride, not revenge. It was satisfaction. Because for once, they were afraid of us. When we reached the core chamber, I finally saw what Project Halo was. It wasn't a weapon. It was a gate. A prototype portal that could bridge light years instantly. No FTL drives. No wormholes. Just step through and arrive wherever coordinates allowed. They were building it to control space, to be the choke point between galaxies, and they never planned on letting humanity use it. That was all I needed to know. We didn't steal it. We destroyed it. Took all their data, their tech samples, then overloaded the fusion core and left the place to burn. The station went dark 2 hours later. All hands lost. No survivors, at least according to their records. Earth never claimed responsibility. The Accord never accused us. But after that day, they changed all access protocols, doubled their guards, and worst of all, they started whispering one word with fear again. Human. Back on Earth. We weren't heroes. We weren't even names. They buried our missions under 20 layers of encryption and disinformation. Officially, Shade Division didn't exist. Unofficially, we were the reason Earth survived. Our tech evolved faster than anyone else's. Not because we had better minds, but because we were desperate. Every year brought a new plague, a new storm, a new loss. So, we stopped waiting for clean science. We experimented. We adapted alien tech into our own, spliced biological systems from 3 species into human volunteers. Some of them didn't make it. Others came back different. Stronger, colder, less human maybe, but still ours. And the Accord watched in silence, too afraid to interfere, because by then, we had our own weapons. Anti-gravity shells, EMP fields that could shut down entire fleets, handheld singularity bombs that collapsed ships into themselves. We didn't mass-produce them. We didn't sell them. We didn't even test them on friendly soil. We saved them because we knew the day would come when they stopped pretending Earth didn't matter and tried to crush us for real. That day came on the edge of the eclipsed border, a disputed zone between 3 Accord-controlled sectors and 2 newly colonized human systems. The Council sent a message demanding evacuation, citing illegal expansion and unregistered development. They gave us 48 hours to withdraw. We gave them silence. Then they sent a fleet. Not a warning strike, a full-blown armada. 17 ships, 3 dreadnoughts, over 12,000 troops, and standing between them and Earth's colonies, 4 human warships, and 1 orbital platform still under construction. We should have lost. Every strategic model said we'd be wiped out in minutes, that Earth's colonies would fall in less than a day, that surrender was the only option. But models don't account for madness. The orbital platform, code-named Ironthorn, wasn't finished, but the AI core was online, and its developer, a man named Gray, had wired a final protocol into its logic, a failsafe. If the platform was compromised, it would initiate full core detonation, enough to take out every ship in orbit, ours and theirs. We didn't even debate it. The last message broadcast from Ironthorn before the explosion wasn't a plea. It was a warning. Earth doesn't recognize your authority. Approach and you will burn. They thought we were bluffing. We weren't. The explosion was so large it fractured the atmosphere of the nearby moon and sent shockwaves through subspace for light years. All 17 ships were turned into drifting ash. All 4 of ours were lost too. The colonists evacuated the night before. They knew what was coming. The Council didn't respond with another fleet. They called for dialogue. They wanted a treaty. They wanted to avoid escalation. But the thing about humans, we don't fear escalation. We are escalation. After Ironthorn, Earth was no longer ignored. We were discussed at every council meeting. They started calling us a wild vector species, an unstable civilization with exponential threat potential. They didn't invite us to join. They wanted to monitor us, contain us. It was too late. By then, we had independent colonies on the edge of every known route. Our people weren't waiting on governments or councils anymore. They were building ships in their garages, carving lives into dust and rock, creating their own laws, and they didn't care who approved. We didn't become a galactic power because we wanted peace. We became a power because we refused to be ruled. And that empty seat they kept offering us at the conclave, we kept turning it down, not out of pride, out of principle. Because once you've buried friends on foreign worlds, once you've tasted your own blood in alien air, once you've seen your home ignored, while everyone else plays God, you realize something. You don't need their table. You just need fire and grit and the will to never kneel. We weren't trying to fit in. We were rewriting what power meant. Not diplomacy, not titles, just results. That's what it means to be human. And they still don't understand it. But they will. Oh, they will. You don't just carry the weight of war on your shoulders. You carry the people who died beside you. And worse, the ones you left behind. There's a story most command won't tell. It happened after Ironthorn. After Earth proved, we'd rather glass a system than beg for approval. The Council didn't launch another fleet. Not immediately, no. They tried something more clever. They targeted our colonies through economics, cut off trade, froze tech exchanges, blacklisted Earth from galactic channels. They thought if they made our people hungry enough, cold enough, desperate enough, they'd turn on their own kind and come crawling back to the Accord. They didn't understand the people who colonized the edges of nowhere weren't looking for handouts. They were the ones who had nothing left to lose. And still, some didn't make it. There was a colony on the edge of the Helix Drift, not even on the maps anymore. Back then, it was called Arlen's Reach, settled by ex-Earth miners, retired engineers, and people who just didn't want to be told what to do anymore. No crime, no council, just dirt, steel, and the will to survive. I was sent there on a follow-up mission with a 3-man team. The colony had gone dark. No signal in over 2 months. No supply requests, no outbound comms. It could have been a comms failure. That was the official reason. But when we landed, we knew better. The wind was wrong, silent, like it was holding its breath. We found the first body hanging from a rusted beam near the main square. No uniform. Just a young guy, shirtless, skin pale from cold. A message was carved into his chest with something sharp. You took too long. The rest, they weren't so kind. Some were frozen in their homes, some torn apart, left like warnings on rooftops. Kids, old men, mothers, no discrimination, no mercy, just systematic cruelty. I remember standing in that square, looking at the carnage, and feeling this thick, wet anger in my throat. Not grief, not yet. That came later. What hit me first was shame. We called ourselves protectors, said we were carving out freedom, said we were fighting so colonies like Arlen's Reach could live without fear, but we weren't there when they needed us. We were too busy trying to prove we mattered to the galaxy, to realize our own people were dying in the dark. It wasn't aliens who did this. It was humans, syndicate contractors, privateers, paid off by the council to send a message. This is what independence costs, they said, without ever saying it aloud. We found them 2 days later camped in the ruins of an old mining shaft. 12 of them, lightly armed, cocky, arrogant. Thought no one would come. We didn't talk. We didn't threaten. We burned them alive. They say revenge eats you from the inside, that it's poison, rot, something that makes you less than human. But standing in that firelight, watching the ones who killed our people scream, I didn't feel less. I felt whole, not because killing them fixed anything, but because someone finally paid. And in a war where justice is rare, that was enough. I carried one thing back from Arlen's Reach, a battered old locket found near the wreckage of what used to be a schoolhouse. Inside was a picture of a girl, 7, maybe 8, missing front tooth, wearing a shirt that said, "First stars are ours." I didn't know her name. I still don't. But I wear that locket around my neck every time I go into combat. Not because I knew her, but because she reminds me what happens when we stop watching. The council said Earth was reckless. Maybe. But that girl, she never got to be reckless. She died waiting for someone to care. That's on us. Command buried the incident. Said if the public found out, we'd have panic across the colonies. Said morale couldn't handle the truth. That was the moment I stopped listening to orders. We'd spent too long following protocols that didn't protect anyone, watching as our leaders negotiated with murderers, hoping the universe would finally treat us as equals. We weren't equals. We were prey, and the galaxy didn't fear diplomacy. It feared defiance. So we started building something new, underground, off-grid, away from Earth's governments, away from Accord surveillance. We called it Redline. Not a base, not a command center, a movement, a collective of soldiers, engineers, rogue AI, off-world hackers, anyone who had seen too much and still came back swinging. Redline wasn't about control. It was about preparation. We knew the council wouldn't stop. Their peace offers were just delays. Their treaties were traps. Every olive branch came with a noose. We knew they were planning something bigger, and next time they wouldn't underestimate us. So we trained, we built. We gathered knowledge the council had buried, learned how their wormhole beacons worked, studied their psychic dampeners, even recovered a prototype warframe from the Karathi vaults, a living exosuit built from organic alloy and neurological thread. We weren't just preparing for defense, we were preparing to strike. Then came Vega Line, a strategic trade route between 3 core Accord planets, fortified, untouchable, constantly patrolled. It had been running without interference for 300 years, until Redline shut it down in a single night. No blood, no bullets. We hijacked the nav satellites, Rongrud the beacon signals, and redirected 3 massive cargo ships into a dead system light years off their path. They sat stranded in the dark for 8 days. High-ranking diplomats, council advisors, cargo worth billions. We didn't touch them, didn't harm a single soul. But we let the galaxy know one thing. Earth had reach now. No system was safe from us. No route untouchable. No secret hidden well enough. The council's response, furious silence. They couldn't retaliate. without admitting how vulnerable they were. Couldn't publicly name Redline without acknowledging Earth's shadow network. We forced them to sit in their own fear. But fear cuts both ways. Not all humans believed in the fight. Some wanted peace, even if it meant crawling. They started pushing back. Said Redline was too extreme. Said we were making enemies out of everyone. Said we were terrorists, not patriots. I remember one of them, a former ambassador, slick hair, perfect teeth, voice like poisoned sugar. He stood on a podium back on Earth and said, "Humanity must earn its place, not by war, but by respect." That day, a Redline transmission hijacked every screen on Earth for 30 seconds. No face, no voice, just one message. Respect is not given. It is taken. After that, every whisper of rebellion faded. Not because we were loved, but because we were necessary. Redline wasn't perfect. We made mistakes. We lost people, good ones. But every operation made one thing clearer. The Accord wasn't built for peace. It was built for control. And Earth, we were the mistake they never accounted for. We were too chaotic, too emotional, too unwilling to obey. And that made us dangerous. So they began working on their final solution. Not extermination, not invasion, eraser. It started slow. Council archives began correcting data. Suddenly, early space history didn't mention Earth at all. Our tech was inspired by Accord collaboration. Our colonies labeled as independent assets. Then came the blackouts. Entire human settlements disappearing from maps. Their signals lost. AI records wiped. Civilian transports routed into dead space. They were unmaking us digitally, historically, as if they thought erasing our name would erase our presence. That's when Redline activated Protocol Null, a full system breach of the Accord's archive nexus. We hijacked every central record node, every public stream, every school database from here to the Helix ribbons. And we broadcast one thing, a message from the girl in the locket. Her voice pieced together from family recordings. Her image recreated from colony footage. She said, "My name is Mara. I lived on Arlen's Reach. I liked stars and stories, and I wanted to build ships when I grew up, but I never got to." Then silence. Then the screen flashed. "You will not erase us." The feed ended. The council didn't speak for 3 days. An Earth seat at the conclave, still empty, still waiting, but not for acceptance, for judgment. You think your enemies are the ones pointing guns at your head, but the worst ones? They smile when you enter the room, shake your hand, call you brother, then sell your soul for a seat at a table that was never meant for us. That's what happened to General Ivar Donald. He was a name once, a hero, the kind of man statues get built for, led the defense at the Rings of Solace, saved over 10,000 colonists during the Telmar collapse. The media painted him as Earth's Iron Heart, the perfect soldier, loyal, steady, unbreakable. They forgot one thing: every man has a price, and Ivar's was silence, bought by the Council in exchange for Earth's conditional entry into their outer networks. No voting rights, no council seat, just access to trade ports and diplomatic hearings. All he had to do was denounce Redline. He did it live. Global broadcast, full regalia, flags behind him, chest full of medals, and that dead hollow voice that made my fists clench the second I heard it. These radicals do not speak for Earth. Their actions threaten peace. We must earn our place, not demand it. Peace, that word again, always said by men who've never bled for it. We watched the stream from a Redline outpost on Vetra 9. Half my team had lost family in the Council's Black Ops raids. One of them, Halder, a quiet engineer with burns up his arm from the Karathi vault job, took off his badge that night. "I didn't sign up to fight humans," he said. "I signed up to free them." He left the next morning. We never saw him again. That's when I realized Redline wasn't just fighting aliens anymore. We were about to fight ourselves. The first Earthside raid happened a week after Donald's speech. Redline Command had a sleeper cell near Chicago Arcology. Just data runners and comms techs. No weapons, no armor, just people trying to keep our signal alive. The Earth Coalition's new Defense Integrity Division hit them in the middle of the night. No warning, no charges. Labeled them as domestic terrorists. Dragged them out in body bags. They burned the safe house to the ground. 2 of the techs were 16. No criminal records, just smart kids who saw through the lies and decided to fight with code instead of guns. Their names were Sarah and Nix. I only knew them from encrypted logs. Nix used to sign every message with, "See you among the stars." Now they're just ash. I returned to Earth for the first time in 6 years after that. Illegally, of course. My face was on half a dozen no-entry lists. But Redline had roots through the old sewers of New Geneva, the kind of tunnels no coalition drone would bother mapping, because it smelled too much like the end of the world down there. I didn't come for revenge. I came for my father. He was one of the original engineers behind the first EarthAid FTL drive. He never joined Redline. Said he believed in evolution, not revolution. Said the system could be fixed. That belief broke when my mother died during the tech riots in Oslo. Stray pulse blast from coalition security while she was trying to protect a crowd of protesters. They called it collateral damage. He never forgave them. When I stepped into his cluttered workshop full of half-built drones and engine parts older than me, he didn't say a word, just stared at me with those tired eyes. Then poured 2 glasses of something dark and sour and handed me one. We drank in silence. Then he asked the question I'd been avoiding for years. "You still believe this fight ends with us free?" I looked at the table at the dust. The old Earth flag pinned to the wall yellowed with age. "I don't know," I said. He nodded. "Good. Because if you were sure, I'd know you were lying." He handed me a chip, unmarked, cold, barely the size of a fingernail. "This is what I've been working on. Council-grade frequency scrambler, can piggyback any known galactic signal, makes their networks ours." My pulse ticked up. This could hijack their deep-net protocols. He nodded again. I stared at him. "You sure you want to give this to a terrorist?" He smiled. "You're not a terrorist. You're what I wish I'd been when I was still brave." We called the operation Black Echo, a full broadcast override of the Conclave's main transmission hub during their annual Peace Accord summit. We'd use my father's scrambler to punch into their frequency and drop a live message. But it wouldn't be words. It'd be evidence. Footage from Arlen's Reach. Logs from the burned safe house in Chicago. Intercepted council messages ordering black site erasers and names. Every human collaborator who helped cover it all up. We didn't care about their laws anymore. We wanted the truth, and we wanted the galaxy to choke on it. It should have been clean in and out, but nothing ever is. 2 days before launch, we lost contact with the relay team in orbit above Horus 6. Gone. No distress ping, no debris, just silence. Then another blackout, and another. 8 Redline operatives gone in 36 hours. We knew what it meant. Donald had made his choice. He wasn't just a puppet now. He was a weapon. The Council's perfect tool. Born of Earth, trained by war, now aimed back at his own kind. And worse, he knew us. Our tactics, our roots, our voices. He'd fought beside some of us in the old wars. He knew how we moved, how we bled, how we broke. And he was coming. They hit our forward base on Arid 4 like a storm made of metal and death. No warning. No posturing, just orbital fire, then boots on the ground. They didn't wear coalition colors, didn't wear Accord badges. They wore nothing. No names, no flags, just black armor and dead eyes. Ghost Division. We thought it was a myth, a council wet dream, a rumor. We were wrong. I watched 2 of my best men, Tom and Cade, get atomized before they could raise their weapons. I dragged Cad's remains out of the fire myself. Bones like cracked glass in my arms. We lost 70% of the outpost, but we didn't lose the chip. That stayed with me. I ran through blood, through screams, through the smell of burning skin, and I held on to that tiny piece of hope like it was oxygen. Because if we lost this, if the Council erased us and the truth, then it was over. Not just for Redline, for humanity. We retreated to the Black Spire, a derelict station spinning dead near the edge of known space. Used to be a mining facility before the veins ran dry. Now it was ghosts and rats, and people like us unwanted. I met with the last command council of Redline. 4 of us left. Me, Lau, a Martian-born field captain who once disarmed a reactor bomb with her bare hands. Sten, an AI core trapped in a shattered walker frame. And Eric, a boy really, 17, but with eyes older than any of us. We were broken, bleeding, scattered, but not beaten. I placed the chip on the table. "We can still run Black Echo," I said. Sten's voice crackled from his broken speaker. "They'll trace the signal in seconds. We won't get a second shot." "I don't care," I said. "If the truth dies in the dark, we never mattered to begin with." Lau nodded. "Let's give the bastards something they'll never forget." And we did. We broadcasted it. Every screen in every sector, every capital, every council chamber, footage of their crimes, of our dead, of the girl with the locket, of colonies burned for defiance, of politicians shaking hands over mass graves, and at the end, just a sentence. Earth never needed permission. Then we shut it down. No trace, no follow-up, just a scar burned into their system. The galaxy knew now, knew what the council was, knew what Earth had become, and somewhere in their clean halls and polished towers, they were afraid, because we were no longer hiding. I still don't know what comes next. I don't know if Redline survives, if Earth tears itself apart before the next war, if the Council launches something we can't stop. But I know this, our seat at their table, it can stay empty, because we were never meant to sit. We were meant to rise and burn and build, and remind the stars why humans are the last species you back into a corner. The galaxy held its breath. That's how it felt anyway. Like every star system, every moon, every outpost and capital and slum was just waiting to see what the Council would do. Would they strike? Would they spin it? Would they pretend it never happened for 3 days? Nothing. No fleet movements, no media denials, not even a hacked smear campaign. Just silence. And in that silence, the people spoke. It started small. Whispers on the dark net. Civilian protest messages passed from one datapad to another. Then came the footage. Council statues being torn down on Corin 5. Mass walkouts in orbiting. Mining ships painting Redline lives in glowing ion trails across the black. Earth's people, not soldiers, not rebels, civilians, were choosing sides. And this time they weren't choosing peace. They were choosing freedom, even if it meant fire. I watched a riot unfold in real time from an abandoned comm tower near Varn's Reach. That city used to be neutral, one of the Accord's little pet experiments. Shared governance, multi-Enices zones, a symbol of unity. That symbol was bleeding. Council security forces in full armor were dragging humans through the streets. Clubs raised, rifles slung, eyes empty. Protesters fought back with bare fists, homemade tasers, rocks, real primitive stuff. They didn't have tactics. They had rage. And for the first time in a long while, rage was enough. They overran a council garrison that day, stole weapons, burned every file, declared Varn's Reach an independent human authority, said they didn't care about the Conclave or Earth's government or anything else, just that no one owned them anymore. Their message echoed across 10 systems. That was the day the Accord's silence broke. The Council didn't release a statement. They issued a directive. They called it Protocol 88 Delta. The words sounded clean, clinical, buried in legality. The reality? Total lockdown. All human settlements in Accord space were to be disarmed. Council-registered officials were to seize comm networks and enforce martial law. Any resistance would be labeled insurrectionist and eliminated with extreme prejudice. That was their answer. Not diplomacy, domination, and Earth, the official Earth. They just stood there watching, stuttering. The weak, useless men in polished suits, hoping their obedience would save them. Redline sent out an emergency signal to all active cells. 2 words. Begin. Rupture. Rupture wasn't a military campaign. It wasn't a fleet. It was an idea seeded into every Redline agent's brain from day one. When the time came, every cell would act independently, not as soldiers following a chain of command, but as sparks lighting their own fires across the stars. We didn't need coordination. We needed chaos. I took my team, what was left of it, to Meridian Bastion, a council and defense facility orbiting a resource-rich world called Forasex. On the surface, it was just another fuel relay. But inside, it was something else. We'd gotten word that the council was storing human dissident there. People from erased colonies, unregistered Earthborn civilians, even children taken during the first waves of containment. Camps. That's what they were. Not prisons, not rehabilitation zones. Camps. When we arrived, we saw it all. Rows of containment pods, neural dampeners humming in the walls, guards with electrolances dragging screaming boys down white hallways like cattle. They weren't preparing these people for integration. They were testing how far the mind could break before it stopped screaming. My rifle felt heavier than usual when I raised it. I didn't speak. I just started killing. We lost Lau in the second corridor. A pulse mine shredded half her chest. She bled out holding my hand, eyes locked on mine. No fear, just resolve. Tell them, she whispered. Tell who? I asked, already choking. She smiled, bloody and broken. Everyone. Then she died. We breached the central tower and cut the power. The doors opened. The prisoners came out blind, limping, some crawling. None of them looked human anymore. No bones showing, faces sunken, minds gone. But they still breathed, so we carried them out one by one. We didn't hold the station. We didn't need to. We left a message instead, burned into the walls with plasma torches. You will not cage us again. And then we detonated the lower decks. Watched it burn as our evac ship took us to black. Back on Earth, things were unraveling. The coalition was splitting in two, hardliners and sympathizers. Donald still had the military, but the people, they were boiling. Civil unrest turned into resistance. Resistance turned into uprising. And still the council believed they could hold it all together, with enough guns, enough propaganda, enough executions, broadcast to make examples out of the brave. But something changed, something they didn't expect. Unity. Not the kind you preach about in chambers, not the kind you force at gunpoint. The real kind. The kind that forms when people bleed for the same truth. A small freighter crew, mechanics and traders hijacked an Accord dreadnought in the Orion line. A civilian union in Lunar 6 stopped exporting fuel to council ships. A farming colony turned its crop machines into war rigs and declared open defiance. And still Earth's seat at the conclave stayed empty. We weren't coming to explain ourselves. We weren't coming to beg. We were already inside their walls, burning their paper empires from the roots. I returned to the ruins of the old Red Line base on Kalen Ridge, the first outpost we ever built. It had been destroyed years ago, but something pulled me there. In the rubble, I found a journal. Not mine. Halder's, the man who left us after Donald's betrayal. Inside were pages of thoughts, sketches, records of every mission he ran, and one quote scrolled over and over like a prayer. We were never supposed to ask for a seat. We were supposed to build our own table. He'd never stopped fighting, just chose his own way like all of us had. And that's when I knew. Red Line wasn't a faction. It was a pulse, beating inside every human who'd had enough. The war hadn't begun yet. Not fully. But the world had changed. The council had made one fatal mistake. They thought they were putting out a fire. But what they didn't realize was, they weren't fighting fire. They were fighting humanity itself. And we don't extinguish. We endure. We adapt. We evolve. And when we are cornered, when the cage closes, when the sky turns against us, we don't beg for mercy. We break the walls. And then we build something better. War doesn't start with a declaration. Not anymore. It starts with silence. The kind of silence you hear when ships stop answering pings, when a patrol doesn't return, when trade routes go dark and nobody sends a distress call because they already know no help is coming. That's what happened in the Driftway, a key stretch of neutral trade space between 5 systems. Earth-backed merchants, council-authorized docking stations, orbital fuel rings gone, all of it. No debris, no comm logs, just emptiness. We thought maybe the council pulled their ships. Maybe it was a quiet move, another suffocation tactic. But when we finally got a recon drone close enough, we didn't find wreckage. We found a message burned into the side of a floating station. 3 words etched in plasma fire. This is war. We didn't write it. Neither did the council. This was someone new, Red Line Command. What was left of it met aboard an old asteroid rig, orbiting a dying sun in Sector 3Z. No official name, just a frequency tag. Wraith Point, off-grid. No AI nav beacons, just old steel and paranoia. I was there. So was Eric, the kid who was no longer a kid. 6 kills, 2 field ops, eyes like someone who stopped hoping a long time ago. We were joined by Rana Vex, former Accord fleet engineer turned saboteur, and Ka, a merc who'd once fought for the council until they left his team to die on some backwater mining rock. Nobody at the table trusted each other. That was fine. Trust wasn't required anymore. Only purpose. We didn't write the Driftway message, Eric said, voice low. And neither did the council. Then who the hell did? Ka growled. Rana slid a file drive across the table. The screen flickered to life, showing a grainy image. A massive battleship, alien in shape, but armored in human steel. Hybrid design. Hull plates marked with unknown symbols. This isn't a council design, she said. It's not Earthborn either. But the engine signature. She paused. It's ours. Turns out Redline wasn't the only rebellion. While we were bleeding in the shadows, another faction was forming out on the edge of known space in the Red Quadrant. A no-man's land of exile colonies, failed terraforming projects, and people the council forgot. They called themselves the Severed Flame. No broadcasts, no propaganda, just action. Stations turned to dust. Entire Accord fleets ghosted. They weren't fighting for recognition. They weren't even fighting for Earth. They wanted to burn everything, and they were using tech that shouldn't exist. Fusion between council gravs and human reactor cores, biological weapon shells coated with neural DNA, portable black hole bombs with sentient targeting, weapons even we wouldn't touch. That's when it hit us. This wasn't just about freedom anymore. This was a civil war inside a revolution. We had 2 choices: join them or stop them. Both felt like suicide, but letting them keep going, that meant every ounce of ground we'd bled for would turn to ash. The council would get what they wanted, not from victory, but from chaos. Because if humans became the monster, they'd be justified in caging us. Redline wasn't clean. We'd done things we couldn't take back. But the Severed Flame, they wanted to erase everything. The council, Earth, even Redline. No more diplomacy. No more peace. Just fire. We couldn't let that happen, even if it meant going to war with our own kind. The next mission wasn't sabotage. It was an execution. We found one of their outer scouts, a flame agent named Kel, running weapons through a council salvage yard off Vega Prime. Looked barely older than Auric. Calm, sharp, way too calm. We cornered him inside an old gravity ring. Weapons up, masks down. I gave him one chance. Stand down. Talk to us. He didn't flinch. I already have, he said, and smiled. That's when we saw the trigger in his hand. It wasn't for explosives. It was a signal. He pressed it, and 3 seconds later, every station in the Vega sector went dark. They didn't bomb it. They collapsed the local quantum net. Thousands of navigation relays gone. Commerce, communication, planetary defense systems, all offline. No one could move. No one could call for help. He didn't care that we had guns to his head because in his mind he'd already won. We killed him not quickly and not clean, but we made sure it wasn't broadcast, that his death wasn't a message. Because that's the thing about men like him. They want to die loud, so we made sure he died quiet. Then we got to work. The next 3 weeks were war without headlines, silent strikes, covert extraction of sympathetic engineers, nulling out flame transmission hubs. We were fighting a ghost made of our own bones. Soldiers trained in the same schools, thinking the same thoughts, bleeding for the same species. Only difference was, they stopped caring who they killed. But back on Earth, something worse was happening. General Donald, the same bastard who denounced us, had finally shown his hand. He wasn't just a council puppet. He was negotiating Earth's complete integration into the Accord. Full membership, not sovereignty, submission. They called it the Unity Compact. All remaining Redline agents labeled as threats to galactic peace. All flame actions blamed on internal human radicalism. And every colony, every independent outpost would fall under council jurisdiction. No vote, no voice, just one final leash. Earth's leaders, the ones who'd once called us terrorists, were smiling on every screen. "This is a new era for humanity," Donald said, standing in a shining hall that wasn't built by human hands. "We are finally coming home." I laughed when I heard that, because he never understood. Home isn't a chair at someone else's table. It's the dirt under your nails when you build something real. It's the blood in your mouth when you fight for something that matters. It's the empty seat at a conclave that never deserved you in the first place. Redline broadcasted one final message across all sectors. Simple, bold, earth bows to no one. And then we blacked out the Unity Compact, signing live in front of 100 systems. Donald never even saw it coming. His last words on screen before the signal dropped. "We are proud to," then static, then silence, then a ripple across the stars. Because now it was war. They say the first strike decides the war. That's a lie. The first strike is just the scream before the real pain starts. We thought we were ready. After all, we'd survived. Burned colonies, shattered alliances, half our people dead or scattered. We thought we'd seen the worst of it. But nothing prepares you for a war where everyone wants to kill you, and no one's wearing the right uniform. Council fleets started moving again. Full scale. No more containment zones or diplomatic enforcers. These were warships. Hammer-class dreadnoughts, zero-atmos torpedoes, orbit-to-ground shell cannons. They didn't send messages anymore. They just wiped systems. The first to go was Terrace Line, a chain of civilian habitats orbiting the lower rings of a gas giant in the Marrow cluster. No military presence, no resistance. Just farming rigs, research families, station workers. One of our intel runners intercepted the comms feed before it was deleted. Execute Protocol 0. Clean slate. No survivors. They turned off life support across all the domes. Pumped vacuum into schools, homes, hydro tanks. Mothers holding babies turned blue against the walls. We uploaded the footage to Redline Command. Nobody cried. We were past tears now. We retaliated hard. They hit our civilians. We hit their infrastructure. We weren't going to waste time trying to take territory. That was the old Earth way. Fight over rocks and flags and dust. Now we fought over utility. We cut power grids and council core planets. Hijacked AI navigation networks. Turned orbital comm satellites into hammers of heat and static. No civilian casualties. Not yet. But every second they stayed blind, they screamed louder than we ever could with bullets. We called it Operation Chokehold. 3 systems blacked out in 2 days. Over 19 million people left without food routing, climate control, or defense alerts. And we didn't fire a single shot. Just code, just nerve, just human stubbornness, with a dash of revenge. The council responded like cornered dogs. They didn't try diplomacy. They deployed the Wardens. Real name, the Stabilization Detachment for Galactic Peace. But everyone called them bone-cold killers in white armor. Cybernetic troops enhanced with muscle lattice, adaptive bone plating, and no emotional inhibitors. They didn't feel rage. They didn't feel fear. They didn't even speak. Just kill. Their orders were simple. Destroy Redline cells. Clean the infection. Show no mercy. They hit us in 3 places simultaneously. A Redline listening post on the edge of the Krell cradle, a mobile weapons rig circling an asteroid chain near Sector D7, and our last Earth-based hideout beneath the Arctic ice dome. I was at the last one, and I still hear the screams. The base was called Bastion Winter. It wasn't flashy, no bunkers or missile silos, just tunnels, ice and steel, hidden under 10 layers of frozen death. It had been safe for 5 years until the Wardens found it. They didn't breach the main entrance. They melted a hole from beneath the glacier with portable suns and came through the dam floor. I was in the command tunnel when the lights died, and the ice started hissing. When I turned, I saw the first one, white plating dripping steam holding a weapon I didn't recognize. It didn't hesitate, fired straight through the wall, vaporized the man beside me. Then it started walking, not running. Walking because it knew it didn't have to rush. I screamed for evac for countermeasures. But it was chaos. Gunfire, blood on the ice walls, oxygen alarms blaring, people shouting commands that didn't matter anymore. I grabbed a railgun and put 5 rounds into the thing's chest. It didn't even flinch, just tilted its head like it was curious. Then it lunged. I don't remember how I survived, only that I woke up 6 hours later under 4 feet of rubble, lungs full of ice dust, and my arm shattered in 3 places. The base was gone. 89 operatives dead. Only 7 of us made it out. The rest, the council erased, and then released a public statement calling it a successful humanitarian de-escalation. So, we hit back again. We found out where the wardens were grown. The Null Forge, a cloning and cybernetic enhancement facility orbiting a sunless planet in the Council's deepest territory. We didn't send a squad. We sent a funeral. 30 volunteers. No return orders. All of them knew it was a one-way mission. They went in with nothing but plasma charges, radiation mines, and nerve disruptors. The Null Forge lit up the sky like a dying star when they blew it. We lost all 30, but we wiped the entire Warden line out of existence. They wouldn't make more, and for the first time, the Council panicked. But while we were fighting the Accord, the severed flame was building something worse. They didn't care about the Council's retaliation, didn't care about civilian lives or political fallout. They just wanted to clean the galaxy. And they finally proved how far they were willing to go. One of their agents, masked and unnamed, infiltrated a Council war summit on Braxil Station, disguised as a sanitation worker. They carried a bioescapade bomb loaded with restructured DNA strains, taken from Earth's extinct plagues, enhanced with alien resilience. When it went off, it didn't explode. It just spread. Within 6 hours, 40,000 people were melting from the inside out. And the flame didn't apologize. They released a statement the same day. Peace is a myth. The galaxy must burn to be reborn. We watched the video from a redline cruiser, and nobody said a word. We weren't on the same side anymore. We hadn't been for a while. Then something happened that shook all of us. The Council requested a ceasefire, not with the flame, with us. They called it strategic dialogue amidst escalating radicalism. They wanted to meet, not with Earth, not with flame, with Redline. They were desperate, cornered, bleeding, afraid of the enemy they couldn't reason with. And for the first time, they saw us as the lesser evil. They thought they could bargain, but they forgot who we were. We weren't diplomats. We were the ghosts of Earth's forgotten wars. And ghosts don't negotiate. I voted no on the ceasefire. So did Eric. So did every survivor from Bastion Winter. We didn't come this far to sit at their table. We came to flip it or burn it. Either way, we wouldn't kneel. Not now. Not ever. We started planning the next move. Not sabotage, not resistance. Something bigger. We called it Ashfall. The kind of strike that would bring the Conclave to its knees and remind every species watching that Earth never needed permission. We wouldn't ask. We wouldn't plead. We'd take what we were owed, in blood, and fire, and memory. There are moments in war when you stop pretending you're fighting for peace. You stop dressing it up with words like justice or liberty or future, and you just admit the truth. You're in it for the payback. That's what Ashfall was. Not a battle, not a diplomatic play, a reckoning. We'd bled in the shadows. We'd buried friends in forgotten colonies. We'd been hunted like animals by our own kind. And every time we got back up, the galaxy handed us another knife in the gut. So this time, we weren't striking from the edges. We were going straight for the center. Target, the Conclave Arc, the most secure orbital station in the known galaxy. Orbiting the Accord homeworld, Zenith Prime, the Arc was a floating fortress 10 kilometers wide, bristling with railguns, pulse cannons, EMP shields, and layers of diplomatic immunity, so thick, even its janitors had legal protection. Every council decision started there. Every cover-up, every execution order, every backroom deal that got a human colony erased. It happened inside those walls, and we were going to blow it straight into the void. Most called it suicide, a frontal assault. Impossible. The Ark's defense grid could atomize a fleet before it got within range. No stealth route, no back door. But we had a plan. A reckless, angry, brilliant plan drawn up by Eric himself. That kid was no longer a scout. He wasn't even just a soldier. He was something else now. Scarred, silent, eyes hollow from too many funerals. And that made him perfect. The idea was simple. We weren't going to attack the Ark. We were going to fly into it. There was a supply route, one used by neutral trading vessels, mostly diplomatic food shipments and tech maintenance crews. Heavily screened, yes, but with one vulnerability: biological clearance. See, every ship's crew was scanned for biometric signatures. Not DNA, but nerve resonance, a unique echo that every living being gives off. The scans were too complex to fake, unless you had the original, which we did, from a captured council diplomat named Saro Malik. He was still alive, barely, after flame raiders had torched his ship in a mistaken hit. We found him crawling through wreckage, blind in one eye, begging for death. We didn't give it to him. We took his clearance signature instead, and then we built a coffin ship. The Wraithblade was an old medical transport rig, reinforced with hull plates, stolen from a council courier, and rigged with a singularity core, pulled out of an illegal flame reactor. It didn't carry weapons. It was the weapon. Packed inside its skeleton was a quantum destabilizer, stolen tech from one of the council's black site science prisons. It had one purpose: rip gravity apart from the inside, activate it in the middle of a station, and the Ark would fold in on itself before anyone could scream. All we needed was to get it inside. That's where we came in. The insertion crew was 6 of us: Eric, myself, Stan. Still half machine, voice distorted, but sharper than any eye I'd ever met. Ka, the ex-Concel merc who'd once betrayed a command team and then burned his own name off the registry. Nola, our pilot, mute, eyes silver from retinal implants, but flew like the ship was part of her blood. And Reeves, a demolition expert who once wired a council cruiser to explode just from opening a door. We called ourselves Ghosts, because by the time we launched, we all knew we weren't coming back. Getting to Zenith Prime was a nightmare. Every Accord-aligned system was crawling with patrols. We had to skim black holes, pulse jump across collapsing asteroid belts, and twice hide inside junk freighters to avoid sensor sweeps. But Nola got us through. The moment we entered the diplomat corridor near Zenith Prime, our ship sent out the stolen signature. The beacon came back. Clearance approved. Docking in Hangar D9. That moment felt surreal, like we'd just been invited into the lion's mouth. And the damn thing smiled. Hangar D9 was pristine. White steel guards in ceremonial robes. No real weapons, just sidearms and protocol tablets. They were used to compliance, used to deference. Not one of them expected what happened next. Kea didn't wait for the doors to open all the way. He shot the first one through the eye. The rest went down fast. We weren't there to negotiate. We were there to destroy. We moved like phantoms through the Ark's hallways. It was strange walking through the belly of the beast and seeing how clean it all was. No blood, no broken pipes, just sterile arrogance. People stared at us in shock. Most didn't even run. They couldn't process what was happening, and we didn't waste time explaining. Reeves set the core. 1 hour till activation. That was the plan. But then we hit the atrium, and everything changed. The atrium was a central chamber where council species gathered for rituals. Symbolic garbage to affirm unity. A massive dome of glass and gold with an artificial sun hanging above. And in the center of it, Donald, the traitor general himself, alive, calm, surrounded by a dozen guards, just standing there, like he knew we were coming. Because he did. "You think this changes anything?" he said, voice echoing across the dome. "This is exactly what they wanted. Proof that humans are uncontrollable, that you can't be reasoned with." He stepped forward, no fear in his eyes, just this strange, calm pity. "I tried to give Earth a future. You're burning it down." Eric stepped out before I could stop him. He didn't raise his weapon. He just stared at Donald. "I watched you sign away our sovereignty. It was the only way to survive." "No," Eric said. "It was the only way you survived." Then he pulled the trigger. Donald fell just like that. No speech, no last breath, just a hole in his chest and silence all around. The guards charged. We dropped them fast. Sten, using mounted turrets. Ka with his twin pistols. Nola pulling out hidden blades from her sleeves like death herself. We secured the chamber. 45 minutes to detonation. But we had a new problem now. Evac Nola said she could fly one of the council's automated shuttles off the Ark. but it would need a manual override from the control tower half a kilometer through hostile corridors. I volunteered. I didn't ask, didn't wait for approval, just grabbed my rifle and ran. The others would finish the job. I just had to give them a way out. I reached the control tower with 7 minutes to spare, slid through hallways, painted with blood and smoke, shot 2 guards, smashed the override panel with the butt of my gun, plugged in the manual drive Reeves gave me. The shuttle systems blinked. I calmed Eric. "You've got a ride. Get out." "You coming?" I looked at the door. 2 more wardens had just arrived, the last of the elite enforcers. They saw me, raised weapons. I smiled. Eventually they charged. I fired, and everything became blur and flame. I don't remember much after that, only that when I woke up, I was on a medical slab in a hidden Red Line outpost. That my arm was gone, half my ribs crushed, but I was alive. So was Eric Sten, Nola, Reeves. Kaka didn't make it. His body wasn't found. But the Ark, the conclave gone, vaporized. The council didn't speak for 4 days. Then their spokesperson appeared, voice cracking, face pale. They declared Earth a level 0 hostile entity. Said any human found in council space was to be detained or terminated. No trials, no negotiations, just war. Full, unapologetic, final. And Earth. Earth sent no reply, because our seat was still empty, still waiting. And soon we wouldn't need a seat. We'd have the whole damn table. After the Ark fell, the galaxy changed. Not slowly, not politically, immediately. You could feel it in the way council ships pulled back from their borders, in the way Earth's leaders stopped speaking in hopeful tones, in the way even the stars seemed to burn with a little more fear. We'd done it. We hadn't just hurt them. We'd humiliated them. Their floating palace was gone. The center of diplomacy erased in less than an hour by a group they'd branded as irrelevant terrorists. Red Line wasn't in the shadows anymore. We were at the center of history, and like all moments of history, this one demanded a face. It wasn't me. It wasn't Steen. It sure as hell wasn't Reeves. It was Eric, the boy who'd once carried our ammunition, who barely spoke unless he had to, whose silence came from a place too deep to fill with words. He had that look now, not of a commander, not yet, but of a man who'd seen too many lines crossed to go back. We buried Ka in silence. Well, what was left of him? A piece of his belt? A broken sidearm? A tooth blackened by plasma? We laid it all in a box, burned it, and poured the ashes into the soil of the Cradle Moon, the last unclaimed rock between Red Line space and council-controlled systems. No speeches, no flags, just dirt. Because that's all this war leaves you in the end. After the funeral, Eric stood on the edge of the landing platform, arms crossed, staring out at the void. I stepped up beside him. Didn't say anything for a while. Then they're going to crown you a savior for this. He didn't look at me. They shouldn't. They will anyway. You killed their king. You brought their tower down. He turned slowly. That doesn't mean I can lead. I looked at him. This kid barely old enough to remember the first blackouts on Earth, now standing with the weight of a dying species on his shoulders. You don't have to lead, I said, but someone has to stand. By the end of that week, Eric's face was everywhere. Not by our choice. We never had media teams, never cared for symbolism, but someone, maybe from a civilian resistance cell, got a hold of the atrium footage. The kill shot. Donald's blood, spraying across the glass floor. Eric standing above him, weapon lowered, eyes empty. They cut it into a transmission, added a single line of text. He doesn't speak, he acts. It played across 13 systems before the council could shut it down. It was messy, raw, unapproved, and it was perfect. Because the people, the scattered human colonies, the sympathizers, the forgotten ones hiding under alien rule, they didn't need a general. They needed a symbol. Eric didn't embrace it, but he didn't run from it either. He called a meeting not just of Red Line cells, but of every independent human militia, every rogue science team, every colony still flying under blackout. It was the first true gathering of Earth's splintered factions. We met inside the skeletal ruins of Daedalus Station, a pre-war relay base orbiting a dead star held together with rust, gravity anchors, and pure will. No lights, no hollow displays, just men and women who had killed and bled and lost everything for the right to decide their own future. Eric stood in the center of the room. No uniform, no armor, just a voice, finally breaking the silence. "I didn't ask for this," he began, "and I won't order anyone to follow me. But the Council isn't our only enemy anymore. The Flame has made that clear. Earth's government is broken. Their puppet general is dead. We're the last ones left who can still shape what comes next." He paused. Let the weight of it settle. Then, "But this isn't about saving what we had. This is about building what they never let us become." He looked around the room, met every eye. Not just survival, not just resistance. A nation, our own, built in the black, ruled by no one. He stepped back. Call it red line, call it Earth, call it nothing. But from this day forward, we stop hiding. And just like that, he wasn't the boy in the shadows anymore. He was the one holding the torch. Not everyone agreed. Some factions walked out. A few old resistance commanders called it delusion. Said unity was a fantasy. Said a war this deep couldn't be won with symbols or speeches. But they didn't see what I saw. The way people leaned forward. The way silence cracked like ice under weight. The way people needed this to be real. We weren't just fighting now. We were becoming. We started building. Not bunkers, settlements, outposts that weren't hidden, ships that weren't smuggled, codes and laws and infrastructure. We reached out to AI drifters, to old scientists who had gone rogue, to colonies so isolated they didn't even know the Ark had fallen. And slowly, painfully, Earth started rising again. Not the Earth in the blue and green books, not the myth of a perfect homeworld, but Earth as an idea, raw, defiant, free. Then came the first Council strike back. They didn't use weapons, they used division. A message was intercepted from an Accord channel, voice modulated, speaker unknown. But the offer was clear. Ark's days are numbered. Join the New Earth Coalition. Amnesty guaranteed. Protection from flame, from redline, from collapse. We don't want war. We want order. And it worked. Some of our allies turned. Outposts went dark. Supply ships vanished. One of our encryption hubs on Atlas 9 was bombed from the inside. A timer hidden in the comms relay. We lost 14 people, including Nola, pilot, Ghost, the girl who never spoke but always listened. The detonation tore through the subdeck before we could even run a trace. Her retinal gear was all we found. Eric didn't speak for 2 days after that. He locked himself in what used to be her quarters, an old crash pod bolted into the command bay. No orders, no broadcasts, just silence, until the night he walked into my quarters, holding the retinal chip in his hand. He set it on the table, eyes unreadable. I thought we were building something real. We are. No, he said. We're building it on ghosts, on graves. I didn't answer. What could I say? He was right. That night, Eric released one more message, just voice, no face, no name, a whisper. We don't fight to become what they are. We fight because we refuse to. And that was it. No threat, no retaliation, just a reminder. And somehow that made it louder than any explosion. By week's end, we had 24 systems flying under red line colors. No anthem, no flag, just an agreement. No kneeling, no submission, no forgetfulness. And yet the flame hadn't moved, not yet, which meant something worse was coming. We had a nation rising from ash, and now for the first time, we had something to lose. We always knew the flame wouldn't stay silent forever. That's the thing about extremists. They don't wait for a war to find them. They build one from bones and rage, and then call it justice. So when the first attacks came, we weren't surprised. But we were wrong about one thing. We thought they'd strike our fleets, our relay points, our commanders. They didn't. They went for the civilians. It started on Drex Station, one of the newer Red Line settlements full of engineers, tech salvagers, and ex-farmers trying to terraform their first habitable ring. No real defenses, just optimism and iron will. They were proud of it, called it Earth's second beginning. The flame turned it into a graveyard in 6 minutes. hijacked a water purification shuttle, turned the reservoir into a chemical dispersal system. No explosions, no alarms, just a slow, beautiful fog. Nanite-laced, invisible to standard scans, designed to target nerve clusters in human tissue. The footage god. People collapsed in the middle of meals, whole families frozen in pain, children crying until their muscles locked and their lungs refused to breathe. Over 4,000 dead. The flames sent no apology, no explanation, just a single message transmitted in full spectrum band. You traded your chains for a new cage. We'll tear down both. Eric didn't speak for hours after the report came in. He just stared at the map, the blinking red marker where Drex used to be. When he finally turned to us, his voice didn't rise, didn't crack. It just changed. Lower, colder. Find out where they launched it. Every route, every whisper. I want to know what fuel moved it, who coded it, who polished the hull. If they sold that tech, I want names. If they built it, I want coordinates. And then, with finality, no more silence. The search burned through 3 systems. Our agents swept through black market ports, intercepted flame frequencies, flipped 3 neutral smugglers for intel. One name kept coming up. Raul Syndica, former council bioscientist turned flame sympathizer. Thought we were the lesser evil, but still evil. Had written papers calling humans an uncontrolled contagion of culture. Disappeared from Zenith space 2 years prior. Now resurfaced, operating under flame command from an abandoned research rig on the edge of Vorn Abyss, a black hole cluster that ate nav beacons for breakfast. It was a trap, but that didn't matter. We were going anyway. I led the strike team. Eric wanted to go. He really did. But for the first time, the Council of Commanders said no. Redline couldn't afford to lose him. And for once, he listened. Maybe that's what leadership does. Makes you choose who gets to die so that others don't have to. Our ship, the Hollow Blade, ghosted through the abyss like it was built for death. No lights, no signals, no backup. Just 6 of us in vacuum gear, hardened armor, and a bay full of pain to deliver. Syndica's station floated like a wound, half collapsed, leaking atmosphere, automated drones drifting lifeless in the black. No defense grid, another trap. We boarded anyway. Every step in those halls felt wrong. Gravity was inconsistent. Lights flickered but didn't go dark. Somewhere deep in the belly of the station, music played on a broken loop. Earth jazz from 200 years ago, warped and stretched. And then we found the lab. It wasn't a lab anymore. It was a shrine. Bodies pinned to the walls in perfect symmetry, vivisected, hollowed out, posed in mockery of prayer. Data drives pulsing with live code written in a hybrid language. Part human, part flame. Syndica wasn't building a weapon. She was breeding one. Strains of nerve-reactive chemical agents. DNA splices, designed to dissolve identity markers. Plague variants that could be keyed to ideology. No genetics, no bloodline, just belief. They weren't trying to kill humans. They were trying to erase Earth as a concept. We found her in the center of it. Naked, but wrapped in wires. Her body plugged directly into the station's neural feed. Eyes gone, replaced with interface lenses. She didn't flinch when we entered. Didn't scream. She just whispered. You think Redline freed you? It made you obedient in a different direction. I raised my weapon. She smiled. You're not fighting for Earth. You're fighting for your chains to be gold instead of iron. Then she closed her eyes and triggered the self-destruct. We barely made it out. The blast cracked half the station in 2, left us tumbling in Zerog with hull breaches and oxygen countdowns. But we had the drives. All of them. We brought them back to Eric. He studied them for days in silence. Then he made a decision that shook every corner of Redline space. He went public, not just to us, but to everyone. Used every hacked comm relay, every recovered signal array, even piggybacked on council emergency frequencies. No lies, no propaganda. He showed the drives. He showed the plague designs. He showed the tortured bodies in Syndica's lab. Then he looked straight into the camera, eyes still that same hollow gray, and said, "This is what the flame fights for, not freedom. An ending, an end to our species, an end to our memory, an end to choice. We will not let that happen. We're not perfect. We've made mistakes, but we are not the enemy. We are the answer. The galaxy cracked in response. Neutral colonies started flying the Red Line sigil. Old Earth militias declared allegiance. Even former Accord citizens, alien-born, began transmitting support. For the first time, Red Line wasn't just a human rebellion. It was a coalition, because people didn't care who ruled anymore. They just wanted to survive, and we were the only ones still fighting like it mattered. But not everyone agreed. 3 of our own commanders broke off. Claimed Eric was becoming exactly what he warned us about, a ruler in the making. Said Red Line was drifting from resistance to empire. They fled with ships, weapons, and over 400 people. We let them go, but we marked their ID tags because war doesn't wait for ideology, and betrayal always comes back. In the middle of all this, Earth, the old Earth, the government shell still clinging to relevance, sent us a message. Simple 3 words. We are listening. Cowards. They hadn't lifted a hand while we bled. But now that we were winning hearts, now that the galaxy was starting to rally under our banner, now they wanted to talk. Eric ignored it, but I didn't. I sent them one word in return. Earn it. We launched Project Bastion the same week. Our first attempt at a true stronghold. A floating city. Not hidden, not militarized, not secret, but open. A living symbol of what Red Line could be when it wasn't just fighting. Engineers, medics, civilians, families. We didn't ask for permission. We built it, and we called it New Terra. But nothing built in war stays untouched. And something is coming. Not from the Council, not from Earth, but from within. The flame hasn't disappeared. They're waiting. And we know, deep down, they're planning to burn everything we've built to prove their prophecy right. That humanity always destroys itself. So we prepare. We sharpen our blades. We teach our children how to aim. We don't mourn anymore, because mourning is for peace, and peace hasn't arrived yet. We thought the threat would come from above. That's how it usually went. Ships on scanners, orbital warnings, explosions, alarms, orders shouted across control decks. We knew how to handle that kind of war. We were built for it. What we weren't ready for, not really, was what would happen when the war stopped knocking and walked right in wearing our colors. New Terra wasn't just a base. It was the first real city built entirely under Red Line control, suspended in orbit around an unclaimed moon near the Gallus Rift, anchored by gravity claws and layered solar arrays. No military flags, no weapons openly displayed. It was meant to be a symbol that we weren't just fighters, that we could build too. It had neighborhoods, shops, cafes, children. Hell, we even had teachers now. It scared the Council more than any fleet we ever launched, because fire they could handle. But a future, a place where humans stood on their own, governed themselves, and needed nothing from the rest of the galaxy. That was a threat they didn't know how to kill, so they didn't try, but the flame did. The first sign something was wrong came in the form of a power anomaly. One of our engineers, Chaz Tiller, sharp kid from a broken colony near Vega Prime, noticed that an auxiliary conduit was drawing twice its usual energy. Not enough to raise alarms, but enough to mean someone was piggybacking. We thought it was just a systems fault, until Chaz went missing. His body turned up in a water reclamation tank 3 days later. No wounds, no bruising, just drowned in a sealed dry access maintenance corridor. Eric stood over the tank when they pulled him out, jaw clenched, fists tight at his sides. Find out who had access to that grid. We did. The logs came back clean. Too clean. Someone had wiped them, but not with a blunt force hack. This was surgical. Someone inside New Terra had the clearance, the tools, and the patience to move like a ghost. And they'd just killed one of our own. We formed a silent investigation unit, hand-picked by Auric, including me, Sten, and a former flame defector named Ilron. She'd turned on the flame 6 months earlier, after seeing what they'd done to a refugee station, and we'd watched her every minute since. She hadn't flinched once. Eric trusted her. I wasn't sure I did. But when you're standing in a house made of matchsticks, you don't question the water carrier. The deeper we dug, the worse it got. Unauthorized data packets, spoofed transmissions, Someone had been quietly feeding information out of New Terror for weeks. Docking schedules, construction blueprints, civilian rosters, enough intel to us. And whoever it was had done it from the inside, not through a single terminal, but through infrastructure. Hijacked servers hidden behind water filters, relay pings embedded in routine maintenance bots. 1,000 little cuts hidden under the skin of a city still learning how to stand. We weren't under attack. We were already bleeding. Then came the second death. Reeves' demolitions field survivor. Mad genius with a detonator found in his quarters. Weapon discharged. Walls coated in blood. But it wasn't a firefight. He'd fought someone. The furniture was shattered. A table leg embedded in the wall. Blood under his nails that wasn't his. The kicker. No sign of forced entry. Whoever did it used his own code to walk in, slit his throat, and make it look like he went out in a blaze. The room was staged just like the station had been. Eric didn't call a meeting, he called a shutdown. Full lockdown of New Terror. Every vent sealed, every dock locked, every civilian scanned. Not to punish, to protect. He made the announcement from the central platform. No armor, no weapons, just a worn shirt, bruises under his eyes, and a voice that sounded more exhausted than angry. We fought every enemy the galaxy could throw at us. We bled in silence while the stars watched. And now someone thinks they can walk among us and kill like a ghost. Let them try. We're not just soldiers anymore. We're a people. And if you think we'll tear ourselves apart like the flame believes, you're already dead. The lockdown held for 2 days. Then the hospital went dark. 17 people inside, injured, recovering, mostly civilians, 1 child. By the time we reached it, the backup power had been rerouted through an illegal loop. The doors had locked from the outside. The air had been vented. All 17 dead. No alarms, no screams, just blue lips and silence. That's when we knew this wasn't sabotage. This wasn't rebellion. This was cleansing. Someone wasn't just killing targets. They were sending a message. Your utopia is a lie. We tore New Terra apart. Infrared sweeps, DNA scans, AI-assisted memory dives, and finally, we got a lead. A face barely captured on a glitching camera feed near the hospital generator. Grainy, blurred, but familiar. Ilra Van. Stan and I confronted her in the agricultural dome. A false paradise of green growth and simulated sun, where people liked to walk to forget they were floating in a war. She didn't run. She didn't even look surprised. She just watched us with those calm, dark eyes. I knew it'd be you, she said to me. He never would have pulled the trigger himself. I raised my rifle. You killed civilians. I saved them, she replied, stepping forward. I gave them freedom from the lie. Red line isn't salvation. It's another cage. Eric's cage. Sten moved behind her, silent. You played loyal, I said. 6 months. She smiled. Long enough to watch your cracks form. I didn't ask for more. I pulled the trigger. 1 shot. Clean. Her body dropped among the rows of growing food, blood soaking the roots of earthborn wheat. Sten looked at me. That's not the last one. No, I said, but it's a start. Eric took the news in silence. He didn't ask for details, didn't ask what her last words were. He just nodded, turned away and said, start preparing the civilians for what? For war inside the walls. Nutra survived the flames ghost, but it didn't come out clean. People grew colder, less trusting. Every friendship now had a shadow. Every hallway a watchful camera. And Eric, he stopped smiling altogether. Not that he smiled much before, but something changed in his voice. Harder, sharper, like steel, cooled too fast, and never forgot the fire. That's the price of building something real. You stop just fearing your enemies. You start fearing your own failure. Because once people believe in you, once they build their lives around your cause, every mistake you make doesn't cost a battle. It costs faith. And faith, once broken, doesn't come back whole. Not in this war. Not in this life. They don't teach you how to govern. Not in the bunkers. Not in the ruins. Not in the back rooms where revolutions are planned with blood and tape and bad lighting. They teach you how to fight, how to kill, how to survive. But no one hands you a book and says, Here's how to hold together a city built from the bones of 100 battles. And that's what New Terra was now. Not a base, not a station, a city ours. And after the Flames infiltration, after Ira's betrayal, after the hospital massacre that left 17 dead and no peace left in anyone's chest, it felt like the walls were made of paper, and all of us tired of bleeding ink. The civilian council, formed only weeks ago, demanded answers. I don't blame them. They'd signed up for Redline thinking they were joining something noble, a movement, a future, a place where Earth finally stood on its own without kneeling. Instead, they got curfews, blackouts, and lockdown patrols in their own streets. They didn't understand what it meant to lead in wartime. They weren't soldiers. They were builders, mothers, teachers, medics, engineers, people who believed they could finally stop running and start living. And we were standing in front of them in combat armor. That's when the cracks started showing. The emergency meeting was held in the atrium core, not some high-security chamber, but a public square meant for announcements, ceremonies, even weddings. Now it was a debate ring. Eric stood in the center, not armed, not armored, just him. Black shirt, sleeves rolled, gaunt eyes. They asked questions, hard ones. When do the lockdowns end? How do we know we're safe if you miss the first traitor? Is this what Redline is now? A military state with a prettier name? He didn't interrupt. He didn't bark orders. He listened. And when the noise finally died, he said just one thing. I don't have perfect answers. I only have what I'm willing to bleed for. And I will bleed to keep you free. Even if that means you hate me for it. No cheers followed. Just silence. And then slow, heavy nods. Because that was the truth. And truth is a blade with no handle. Afterward, he and I sat on the upper ring, watching the moon rise through reinforced glass. He didn't look at me when he spoke. Am I losing them? I didn't lie. You never had all of them. He nodded. But I had enough. You still do. Not for long. Not if this keeps happening. He turned, and there was something in his eyes I hadn't seen before. Not weakness. Not doubt. Just wait. This is different, isn't it? He asked. What? Building something. It's not like war. In war you can die right and still be a hero. Here, one bad day and you become the villain. He stood and walked off before I could answer. But he didn't need my answer. He already knew it. The next crisis didn't come from the council. It came from the food. Crop failure. The hydroponic towers in Sector 4 went dry. Filters overloaded. Algae contaminated. Weeks of water reserves tainted with chemical rot. Whether it was sabotage or just human error didn't matter. We were starving. New Terra had been running on tight margins since day one. We'd poured resources into construction, defense, and infrastructure, not luxuries. Certainly not stockpiles. People had to ration. Lines wrapped around corridors. Children cried in silence while parents gave them half meals. And in the silence, rumors grew teeth. Maybe the council was right. At least the flame promises a clean ending. Redline's just Earth with a prettier uniform. We tried to respond with numbers. We showed them the repairs underway. We released video feeds from engineers in the trenches. But logic doesn't feed the hungry. Only food does. And we didn't have enough. That's when the riots began. Small at first. Protests, banners, shouting matches near distribution stations. Then broken windows, then fists. Then one of the medtech centers was set on fire by our own. Someone screamed on the intercom. You promised us a new world. You just gave us a cage with better views. The fire was controlled, but the message, it wasn't going out. It was growing inside. Eric didn't lash out. He didn't declare martial law. Instead, he went down to the distribution center himself, walked through the crowds, took off his ID badge, carried water with the volunteers. I watched from a rooftop. No bodyguards, no speeches, just a man moving through the grief. And for a moment, the shouting stopped. Someone handed him a spoonful of rationed soup. He ate it. No complaint, no camera, no fanfare. Just a quiet admission. I'm one of you, and sometimes that's enough. We secured an emergency trade convoy 3 days later. 3 cargo freighters full of nutrient paste, filtered water, and solar kits. Paid for in blood and blackmail. Old Redline contacts. Neutral smugglers who owed us favors from the days when we didn't even have names. They delivered, and that bought us a month, maybe 2. But even survival comes with consequences. Word of New Terra's vulnerability spread faster than light. To Earth's loyalists, to the Flame, to the Council, to everyone who'd been watching, waiting for the cracks to show. Now they had coordinates. Now they had reason. And we knew the silence was just the inhale before the next wave hit. I asked Eric days later what we do if New Terra fell. He didn't hesitate. We build another one, and if that one falls, we build again. He looked at me, tired, but not empty. They can kill the city, but they can't kill the idea. That's when I realized something. He wasn't holding Redline together with guns or speeches. He was holding it together by refusing to give up. Even when it crushed him, even when it broke him, even when no one thanked him. Because that's what leadership is in the real world. It's not glory. It's not legend. It's the willingness to be hated by the people you love, because it's the only way they'll live. That night, Eric recorded a message, one that would go out to every sector, every refugee camp, every neutral channel we could find. I watched from the corner of the room as he spoke, voice low, steady. To those who still believe in the idea of Earth, this message is for you. Not the Earth we lost, not the governments or borders or poisoned oceans, but the Earth we were meant to become, the one they never let us build. We are still here, still building, still free. We will make mistakes. We will bleed, but we will never kneel. And if you're out there, tired, afraid, alone, come home. New Terra is real, and she's waiting for you. No music, no flag behind him, just a man too tired to lie. And in that fatigue, there was strength, because truth doesn't need polish. It just needs someone willing to say it. The message aired across 17 systems, and for the first time in weeks, people believed again. More volunteers arrived, more hands for the farms, more weapons on the walls. We were still bleeding, but now we were healing too. We held the line that week. No riots, no attacks, no power failures, just silence. But not the kind that comes from fear, the kind that comes before a heartbeat. We were still alive, and that meant everything. The attack didn't come with warnings, no declarations, no demands, just shadows. We picked them up on long-range sensors 2 hours before impact. 6 Council warships, signature blocked, moving without beacon signals. That alone told us what we were dealing with. No observers, no diplomacy. This wasn't about compliance. This was execution. The fleet wasn't big. It didn't need to be. 2 Hammer-class dreadnoughts, 4 Shard cruisers, and 1 Black Halo, an elite orbital killer that didn't even officially exist. No names painted on their hulls, no call signs, just the Council's final answer. By the time Eric stood in the command ring of New Terra's central control tower, the entire city was on lockdown. I stood beside him, gear strapped, rifle charged, jaw locked. He didn't speak for several minutes as we watched the ships advance. The system's sun cast cold light across the dreadnoughts' hulls, making them look less like ships and more like verdicts. Finally, he spoke. To them, this isn't even war. What is it then? I asked. He turned to me. Cleanup. We called General Evac Protocol 1, not because we planned to abandon New Terra, but because the families came first. The civilians, the medics, the ones who hadn't asked to build a revolution with their bare hands. We split them into clusters, loaded them into our fastest jump ships, launched them across 3 separate vectors, each toward friendly space. Some cried, some didn't. Some just looked back at the walls they'd built with blood and sweat and dreams, and whispered a promise, we'll return. Then we got to work. New Terra was never built as a fortress, but we'd learned. We had plasma turrets now, drone swarms, magnetized defense fields coated with stolen Council algorithms. Not enough to win, but enough to make them bleed. We stood on walls made of repurposed steel, patched with regret, and welded by faith. And for the first time, we had something to defend. Not just people, not just freedom, but hope. The first wave came at 0430. 2 Shard cruisers broke formation, launching pulse bombs at our orbital grid. We countered with proximity mines, dozens detonating in perfect sync, creating a ripple in space that sent one cruiser spiraling. The other slammed through and hit our lower hull. 17 dead. Airlock breaches. One section lost completely. We didn't flinch. Sten coordinated drone strikes from the upper decks. Eric moved between sectors, like he didn't feel pain. I held the west flank with 100 volunteers, half of them with barely a month of weapons training. But they didn't run. They stood. Every time the lights dimmed, every time the ship groaned, every time the alarms howled, they kept their eyes forward. Because if New Terror fell, then Earth fell with it. By hour 5, the Council deployed the Halo. I'd only read about them in black reports. Untraceable. No pilot, no mercy. An AI-controlled dreadnought, designed not to conquer, but to pulverize. It hovered above New Terror like a god with no face. Then it began lowering its spear, a compression cannon, one of the few weapons in the galaxy capable of collapsing an entire orbital station in one shot. I saw the spike charge start glowing through the upper atmosphere. Sten's voice crackled in my ear. We have 10 minutes. Options. Suicide, mostly. We needed a distraction. Something impossible. Something suicidal. Something just stupid enough to work. So, I got in a fighter. I hadn't flown in years, back when Earth still had skies worth flying in. But once you learn, it never leaves you. Like a scar you can breathe through. I powered the Whisper Fang, a relic from the early resistance days, barely held together with hope and duct tape. Eric stopped me at the hangar. You sure? No, you won't make it. I'm not supposed to. He looked at me like I was already a ghost. Then he nodded. Make it hurt. I launched through a breach vent trailing behind the station's heat signature to avoid pinging the Halo's sensors. I knew the path. Knew the flaw in its lower design. A cooling intake system, too small to defend but too vital to shield. If I could get under its belly and detonate my fuel cord just right, it would stall the charge. Not destroy it, just buy time. And that's all Redline ever needed. Time to fight back. I burned half my maneuvering thrusters, getting under that monster. It didn't even notice me. Not at first. But when the targeting AI pinged my vector, the entire ship turned like it was waking up angry. A weapon that hunted emotion. It locked on. I powered the core. It charged faster than I expected. Too fast. And for a second I thought of Earth. Not the cities. Not the sky. Just the girl who handed me a bowl of soup on ration day. You're one of us, she said. That's what I thought about as I smiled and hit the trigger. I woke up in a field hospital. Smoke, lights, cracked ribs, but alive. I didn't understand why at first. Then I saw her. Nola, pilot, mute, ghost, alive. She'd taken a second fighter, followed me, hit the Halo's belly half a second before my core would have detonated. Her ship gone, but her nav pod recovered. She saved the station, saved me, and she still didn't speak. Just nodded once when I stared at her, then left the room like nothing had happened. The Halo was crippled, not destroyed, but stalled. It peeled away from the station like a wounded animal, retreating into the dark. The other ships followed. They didn't want to die, and New Terra still stood. Barely, but standing. We lost 419 people, almost a third of our defense crews. Whole decks gone. Cracks in the hulls still venting air. But when the civilians returned days later, they didn't come home to rubble. They came home to proof. Proof that we weren't just noise. Proof that Earth's ghosts could bleed and not fade. Eric addressed the station a week later, not with a speech, with a single line. We didn't survive. We lived. And now we build stronger. And this time, the silence afterward. It wasn't fear. It wasn't mourning. It was faith. The kind you earn in fire. War leaves damage you can't see. You walk the halls of the city you nearly died defending, and everything looks the same. Steel walls, blinking consoles, faces of people nodding in respect. But none of it feels right. Not because the place has changed, because you have. That's what I saw in Eric's eyes the day after the council pulled out. He wasn't celebrating. He wasn't relieved. He just looked hollow, not empty, just running out. And then the message came. It came on a low-frequency channel. encrypted in a format no redline terminal had used in almost 8 years. That alone made it suspicious. Eric brought me and Sten into the comms chamber. No tech crew, no analysts, just the three of us, and a blinking console like a slow-beating heart. He entered the decryption key by hand. His hand, the one code only he remembered. The screen flickered, then a voice, ragged, cold, unmistakable. "Eric, if you're hearing this, then the grave didn't take me." Sten stiffened. I felt my stomach drop. Eric didn't move. The voice continued. "They thought I died in the Helix breach, but I didn't. I was taken by the Council, held, rebuilt, and now I see what they really are. But I see you too. You built something. You did what I couldn't, but it's not enough. You're fighting 2 wars, and there's a third coming." Then silence. Then coordinates. End transmission. The voice belonged to Commander Ree Calder, Redline's original founder, Eric's mentor, and the man we buried 6 years ago. Or so we thought. Ree wasn't just a war hero. He was the blueprint. He led the first rogue cells after the Accord struck Earth with sanctions. He built the early networks. He trained us. Trained Eric when we were just orphans of a dying planet. He was smart, ruthless, focused, but he also believed until he was caught. Helix Station, Black Op double cross. No body was recovered, just a data core soaked in blood and an empty harness. We all assumed the Council reduced him to vapor. Turns out we were wrong. The coordinates pointed to a dead zone near the Myos expanse, a stretch of space filled with storm matter and gravitational anomalies that warped long-range signals. Nothing lives there. Nothing lasts there. Perfect hiding spot or perfect bait. Eric didn't hesitate. He said we were going. We took a small team. Me, Sten, Nola, and Eric. No fleet, no escort. Just the 4 of us in a blackout rig called Vigil's End. A ship built for silence. We didn't tell the Council. Didn't alert New Terror Command. Because if Ree wasn't dead, then everything we built was standing on a lie. The Myos expanse was worse than I remembered. Space bent in ways it shouldn't. Our sensors lied. Our AI got confused. Sten had to pilot manually using fixed beacons. And even then, we nearly drifted into a gravity pocket. But the signal was there, waiting, unchanged, still pulsing. We followed it straight into hell. The station wasn't Council. It was human-made, old Earth design, pre-Accord, patched together with debris, and reinforced with solar armor. We docked, weapons ready. No response, just the door sliding open like a sigh, and the dark beyond it. We entered with rifles drawn, boots echoing against the dead metal floor. The place was abandoned, or it looked that way. Lights flickered. Old Earth banners hung in torn silence. One of them still bore the redline mark, the original sigil before Eric simplified it. No bodies, no tech, just ghosts. Then we reached the central chamber and he was waiting. Reese Calder stood like a man made of smoke and scar tissue. His face had changed, aged, hardened, half rebuilt with cybernetic implants that hummed softly under his jaw. One eye gone, replaced with a Council-grade tactical lens. But the voice still his, still iron. "Eric," he said like it was a memory instead of a name. Eric stepped forward. "Prove it." Reese smiled. "You broke your left hand training with the blade because you refused to wear gloves. I let you keep training anyway." Said pain was part of the learning. Eric lowered his weapon. Reyes didn't. We sat, talked. He told us what happened. The ambush, the capture, the prison, but most importantly, the conversion. They hadn't just locked him up. They'd tried to flip him. Said they gave him a purpose, gave him a role, gave him a chance to shepherd humanity into compliance. He played along for years until he saw the real plan. Not conquest, extinction. Not through war, but through assimilation. They want us diluted, reduced, so afraid of our own history that we erase ourselves to fit in. He escaped 6 months ago, but not before seeing files, blueprints, orders, a new initiative. The Council called it the Quiet Protocol. It wasn't military. It wasn't overt. It was sociological, a long-term operation to infiltrate, influence, and reprogram human settlement cultures into post-Earth constructs. No flags, no history, no identity. Not by force, but by conversion. Erase the idea of Earth by changing what people think Earth ever was. One generation at a time. They'd already begun in 16 colonies. Ree looked at Eric, voice low. You're fighting the wrong front. The flame is a spark. The warships are noise. But this is the knife already inside the heart. Eric said nothing, but I could see his hands shake. Not from fear, from recognition, because we'd seen it too. The young defectors who didn't remember Earth, who didn't care about names or history. People who didn't know what they were losing because they'd never been taught it mattered. We returned to Neutra with everything Ree gave us. Files, proof, a copy of the quiet protocol embedded in a stolen council drive. And now we knew the truth. The war wasn't going to be won with weapons. At least not entirely. It was going to be won in minds, in stories, in memory. Eric addressed the entire city the next day. No armor, no tactics, just truth. They don't need to kill us. They just need to make us forget who we were. Earth isn't a planet anymore. It's a belief, and they fear that belief more than our bullets. So we remember, we teach, we build, and we fight. Not just for land, not just for survival, but for the idea that we never needed permission to exist, and we never will. The city didn't erupt in cheers, just quiet nods, tears, some standing straighter than they had before. That was enough. The council's weapons had failed. The flames' chaos had failed. Now they were trying something older, more dangerous, silence. But we'd already learned how to break that. With every word we remembered, with every name we passed down, with every time we looked up at the stars and said, "We are still here." We intercepted the first transmission, 6 days after returning from the Myos expanse. It came from a human colony in a cord-aligned space. Unity Reach, they called it. We had records on it. Originally named Eden's Cry, founded by Earth refugees during the resource famines. Barely survived the first iceburn wave. They were Redline sympathizers in the early years, until they vanished. No pings, no contact, assumed destroyed in a pirate raid. Turns out they weren't destroyed. They were rewritten. The transmission was wrong. There were humans on screen. Yes, but they weren't ours. No Earth patch, no Redline insignia, no dialect markers. They wore sterile uniforms, white seamless ident tags labeled by council number, not name. They spoke in an eerie harmony, like their voices had been flattened, smoothed, drained of defiance. We thank the Accord for removing division. We are one species now. Earth was a myth. Progress is unity. They smiled when they said it. They smiled like they believed it, like Earth was a disease they'd been cured of. Sten analyzed the speech cadence, confirmed subtle neural-linguistic patterns woven into their syntax. That kind of conditioning takes years and more than propaganda. It takes surgical control, targeted curriculum, sterilized data feeds, memory eraser embedded in schooling, visual and audio reinforcement every waking hour. The quiet protocol was live. Unity Reach wasn't the only one. It was the 7th confirmed case. Eric didn't sleep that night. I watched him in the strategy chamber, eyes fixed on the replay, watching people who used to fight for smile, like they'd never bled for anything in their lives. When I stepped in, he didn't look at me. "Do you remember the song?" "What song?" He finally turned. "The one they used to sing in the bunkers before battle." I did. It wasn't much of a song, just a chant. Low, gritty, rhythmic. We don't break, we bury. We don't kneel, we carry. Earth is not a planet. Earth is what we are. I nodded. I remember. Eric stared back at the screen. They don't. We didn't need to debate what came next. We were going to Unity Reach, not to burn it. To find out if there was anything left to save. And if there wasn't, then we'd decide what Redline did with traitors, who never meant to betray. The colony sat on the rim of a gas giant, its surface shielded by kinetic domes and heat stabilizers. It looked perfect. Too perfect. We dropped a 3-person team, Eric, Nola, and me. Stone stayed in orbit with the evac rig just in case. We went in unarmed, visibly at least. No armor, no banners. Just 3 humans in worn jackets breathing air we weren't sure was still meant for people like us. We walked into the heart of a city that used to belong to Earth, and no one recognized us. They didn't look oppressed. That was the strangest part. No security forces, no guns, no barricades, just peace. Sterile, empty peace. They walked in straight lines, smiled on command. Their faces were clean, clear, blank. The city pulsed with harmony and no soul. Eric asked the local where the memorial site was. The man tilted his head. Memorial for what? Eden's Cry, Eric said. The man frowned. I don't know that name. Eric didn't reply. We kept walking. We entered the old archive, now a Unity Knowledge Hall. Inside were terminals glowing with bright symbols. History, they called it. We pulled the files. There was no mention of Earth, no mention of Mars, no red line, no council oppression, just a curated story of interstellar peace through Accord guidance. It didn't just remove rebellion. It rewrote origin, made Earth a side note in galactic history, an unstable backwater that bred violence and had to be absorbed for the greater good. I saw Eric's fists clench, and for a second, I thought he was going to tear the terminal apart, but he didn't. He turned and walked away. We found her by accident, a girl maybe 16, sitting alone in a back corridor, reading a physical book paper, banned in Accord curriculum. We stopped. She looked up, wide eyes, a little fear, a little curiosity. Eric knelt. What's your name? She hesitated, then whispered, Lyra. He smiled. That's an Earth name. Her eyes flickered. They say it's not, but I found this. She held up the book. It was old, worn, missing the cover. Inside were stories, Earth stories, fables, war tales, journal pages from colonists on Mars, resistance poetry, smuggled, hidden, preserved. Eric's voice caught. Where did you get this? My grandmother left it before she went to the reconditioning center, said it was the truth beneath the quiet. My heart dropped. Reconditioning, the council's method for breaking the ones who didn't submit quietly. We asked her where the center was. She gave us directions, then added, if you go there, you won't come back. Eric nodded. We're not here to come back. The reconditioning center wasn't a prison. It was a clinic. White walls, soft voices, recliners, doctors, with gentle eyes and scalpels hidden in their words. They took in dissident and sent out obedience. We entered under false IDs. Security barely scanned us. That's how confident they were. We found the rooms slick, clean, patients strapped into reclined chairs, eyes open, watching screens play curated images of peace, unity, harmony. The same phrase over and over. Earth is chaos. Unity is peace. Over and over and over. And then we found her. The grandmother, still alive, gray hair, wrinkled hands, but her eyes still hers. Eric asked her name. She smiled, faint. Tess, you gave Lyra the book? Her eyes flickered. You saw it? He nodded. She remembers. Tess's voice cracked. Then I can die now. Eric knelt, took her hand. You don't have to. She gripped him like a ghost clinging to her last body. They'll never let it go. They'll smile while they erase us, and they'll make our children thank them for it. She gave us one thing before she passed. A memory chip buried in her spine, encrypted with old Earth code. A full archive of everything the Council erased from Eden's Cry. We didn't start a firefight. We didn't ignite rebellion. We just left. Quiet like ghosts with proof. Back on New Terra, we decrypted the chip. Eric watched the old photos. Buildings. He remembered names he'd written into the Red Line Oath. Footage of protests, battles, losses. The real Eden's Cry, now called Unity Reach. He stared at the data, then turned to me and said something I didn't expect. I'm not ready for peace. What? If peace means forgetting, then I'll stay at war forever. He made a decision the next morning not to fight Unity Reach, but to flood it. Not with bombs, with memory. We hacked every comm station, every data pad, every learning terminal in the colony, uploaded the full Eden's Cry archive, the old anthem, the names, the faces, the stories, and one final message. They didn't forget. You were made to. But truth isn't quiet. It just waits. We don't know how many saw it or how many believed. But somewhere, a girl named Lyra held a book and whispered a name her teachers said never existed. Earth. And that was enough. They offered him a seat after everything. The war, the sabotage, the exile, the betrayals. After Earth's name had been wiped from council records, and Redline had been hunted, buried, scattered, and reassembled into something that finally stood on its own. They offered Eric a seat at the accord table. 6 chairs, 1 left open, not because they respected us, because they feared what would happen if they didn't. The transmission came from the Accord's Grand Assembly Station, a structure the size of a small moon, glittering with the arrogance of 1,000 systems. Eric didn't answer the first time, or the second. They kept sending envoys, not soldiers, not spies, politicians, smooth words, empty smiles. We recognize your sovereignty. We believe it's time humanity took its place. Your leadership could preserve peace. Peace? That same old lie, with a new coat of paint. I found Eric alone, on New Terra's outer ring, the night before his decision was due. He was staring at the stars, not in wonder, in suspicion, like they'd betrayed him too. I didn't speak right away, just stood beside him in the quiet. He finally said, "Do you remember what we said the day Redline was born?" I nodded. "We don't kneel, we build." He turned to me, eyes bloodshot, but alive. "They want us to sit now. That's not kneeling, right?" I didn't answer because he already knew. A seat at their table wasn't peace. It was a burial. A velvet-wrapped grave for everything we'd fought for. If Eric took it, even as a symbol, it meant compromise. It meant our dead could no longer speak. It meant Earth stopped being a fire and became a flickering candle, safe and dim, watched over by the same hands that once tried to smother it. But if he refused, if he told the Accord to shove their seat and left that space empty like it had always been, he'd be starting the war all over again, only this time with every eye on him. Some wanted peace, some wanted pride, some just wanted to breathe without choosing a side. And he was standing on the razor's edge between them all. Sten, Nola, and I stood behind him when he walked into the Grand Assembly chamber. No weapons, no armor, just the old Earth flag folded under his arm. Not the modern one, the burned one. The one salvaged from the ruins of the old colonies, stitched together with frayed cloth and smoke. The chamber fell quiet when he entered. He was the last arrival. The empty chair at the table gleamed with polished chrome. They gestured for him to sit. He didn't. He walked past the chair, stopped at the center of the room, unfolded the flag, and laid it gently across the floor, not in protest, in memory. Then he looked up at the 6 seated leaders and spoke. The seat was always empty, not because we weren't ready, but because we never needed permission. You didn't break us. You buried us, and hoped the dirt would do the rest. And now that the roots have grown back stronger, you want to share the fruit. We're not your equals. We're not your enemies. We are the reminder that you failed to silence a species you couldn't understand. We don't want your seat. We built our own table. The room was still. Then voices rose. Accusations, fear, condemnation. Eric didn't flinch. He just turned and walked away, leaving the seat behind, still empty. The aftermath was chaos. Some council worlds called for sanctions. Others declared solidarity with Redline. Old alliances split. New ones formed in the vacuum. We didn't wait to see how it all shook out. We went back home to New Terra because we had more important things to do. Ree Calder died a month later quietly. No ceremony. He left one final message for Eric. Just 4 words. You did it right. Eric didn't cry, but he didn't speak for a full day afterward. Redline wasn't a rebellion anymore. It was a nation. Flawed, wounded, but real. Our schools taught Earth history. Not just the wars, but the spirit. Our people voted. Our children spoke their minds without fear of being corrected. We even had debates. Loud, brutal, passionate. Because that's what free people do. They argue. They fight for better. They don't sit quiet. Eric stepped down from military command. He said he was tired of being a symbol. Said symbols eventually get carved into statues, and statues don't bleed when things go wrong. He didn't want to be untouchable. He wanted to walk the streets and be challenged. To look someone in the eye and say, "No, we're not perfect, but we're ours." He gave the final speech, not from a podium, but from a garden with kids, laughing in the background, dirt on their hands, sky over their heads. You're the reason they failed, because you're still here, still choosing, still thinking. They couldn't erase you. They tried, through war, through lies, through silence. But you remembered, and now you build. So don't wait for permission. Don't wait for peace to be handed down from a throne. Make it. Bleed for it if you have to, because Earth was never just a planet. Earth is the fire that lives in the people who refuse to die quietly. He left after that. No parade, no crown, no title. Just Eric walking into the horizon with a bag of tools and a book of stories under his arm. We never saw him again. But we didn't need to. He didn't need statues. He didn't need cities named after him. He needed one thing, for the seat to stay empty. Because that seat, the one at the council's table, is still there, waiting, shining, calling. But we don't fill it. We never did. Because Earth never asked for permission, and we never will.